I never thought I'd end up here, alone in a hospital room 3 days after open-heart surgery, staring at my phone and realizing my son had blocked my number. The nurse had just told me I was being discharged in 2 hours, and I had no one to pick me up, no money for a cab. My apartment was 40 miles away in a neighborhood I could barely afford. I was 54 years old, and for the first time in my life I understood what it meant to be truly abandoned. My name is Harold Pearson, but everyone calls me Hal. For 33 years, I delivered mail in Houston, Texas. Rain, shine, or those brutal August heat waves that made the asphalt soft under your feet. I walked those routes until my knees gave out and my back couldn't take it anymore. I retired at 52 with a pension that barely covered rent and groceries, but I was proud. I'd raised my son Tyler alone after my wife Nancy died when he was 9. I worked double shifts, skipped meals, wore the same jacket for 10 years, all to give Tyler opportunities I never had, and it worked. Tyler got into University of Houston, then landed a job as an insurance adjuster at one of those big companies downtown. The kind with glass towers and parking garages that cost more per month than my rent. He married Stephanie, a woman who sold million-dollar houses and drove a BMW. They lived in Sugar Land with more square footage than I had in my entire building. I was happy for him, proud even. Sure, the visits became less frequent. Birthday calls got shorter. Christmas became a text message with a $50 gift card to Olive Garden. But he was busy, successful. That's what I told myself. Then came the chest pains. At first, I ignored them. Old age, I figured. Stress from trying to figure out how to pay for the leak in my bathroom ceiling. But one Tuesday morning, I collapsed in the parking lot of my apartment complex. My neighbor, Betty Williams, found me and called 911. The doctors said it was serious. Triple bypass surgery? I'd need it within a week, or I might not make it to 60. The surgery alone was $35,000. Medicare would cover most of it, but not everything, and I'd need somewhere to recover. Someone to help me for at least 2 weeks. I called Tyler. It took him 8 hours to call back. When he did, there was noise in the background, voices, laughter. He was at some kind of company event. "Dad, this is really bad timing," he said. I could barely hear him over the music. "Stephanie and I are at a client appreciation dinner. Can I call you tomorrow?" "Tyler, I'm in the hospital. They're saying I need heart surgery." The background noise became muffled. He must have stepped outside. "What, when they want to do it Friday? I'm scared, son. I need you to be here." There was a pause. "A long one Friday." "Dad, I have a major claim investigation Friday. It's been scheduled for months. I can't just..." "Tyler, please. I might die." Another pause. "You're not going to die, Dad. You're tough. You raised me, didn't you? Look, I'll try to visit over the weekend after the surgery." Okay. He didn't visit that weekend or the next. He sent a text the day of my surgery. "Good luck, Dad. You've got this." That was it. No call, no visit, nothing. The surgery was terrifying. They cracked open my chest, rerouted my blood vessels, and when I woke up, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. The pain was everywhere, but worse than the physical pain was the emptiness. I was in a recovery room with 3 other patients, all of them with families crowded around their beds, wives holding hands, children bringing flowers. My bed had just machines beeping and a window that looked out at the parking garage. On the 3rd day, a nurse came in. Her name was Nancy Rodriguez. She was one of those nurses who'd seen everything and had no patience for nonsense. She'd been checking on me regularly, and I think she'd noticed I never had visitors. "Mr. Pearson," she said, reading my chart. "You're being discharged this afternoon. We need to know who's picking you up and what your home care situation looks like." "I'll figure it out," I said. She looked at me over her reading glasses. "You just had open-heart surgery. You can't drive. You can't lift anything over 5 pounds. You can't climb stairs without help. You need someone at home with you for at least a week. I'll manage, Mr. Pearson. This isn't optional hospital policy. We can't discharge you without a care plan. Then I'll call a cab. My apartment's on the 1st floor. I'll be fine," Nancy sighed. "Do you have anyone? Family? Friends?" I thought about lying, but what was the point? My son, but he's busy. She didn't say anything. She'd heard that before, I'm sure. "I'll see what I can do." "Give me an hour." I lay there feeling humiliated. 54 years old, and I couldn't even arrange a ride home from the hospital. I'd spent my entire life being self-sufficient, never asking anyone for help, and now I was completely helpless. I thought about calling Tyler again, but my pride wouldn't let me. If my own son couldn't be bothered to check on me after major surgery, I wasn't going to beg. That's when I discovered he'd blocked my number, When I tried calling from the hospital phone, it went straight to voicemail. That's when Dr. Richard Campbell walked in. I'd met him briefly before the surgery. He was the cardiac surgeon who'd performed the operation, late 60s, silver hair, the kind of presence that made you feel calmer just by being in the room. He usually had residents trailing behind him, but today he was alone. "Mr. Pearson," he said, pulling up a chair next to my bed. "How are you feeling? Like someone cracked open my chest," I said. He smiled slightly. "That's accurate. I did crack open your chest, and I put it back together quite nicely, if I do say so myself." He picked up my chart, scanned it, then set it down. "Nancy tells me you're having trouble arranging a ride home. I'll figure something out. She also tells me you live alone, 40 miles from here. No family support." I said I'll figure it out. Dr. Campbell was quiet for a moment. He had this way of looking at you like he could see right through whatever you were trying to hide, Mr. Pearson. "I'm going to be direct with you. You cannot go home alone, not yet. You need someone checking on you, helping with medications, making sure you're eating properly, watching for signs of infection or complications. Without that, you have a significant risk of readmission or worse. What do you suggest?" "I can't afford a nursing facility. My pension barely covers rent." He leaned back in his chair. "I have a suggestion. It's unconventional, but hear me out." He paused as if choosing his words carefully. "I have a large house, more space than I know what to do with since my wife, Linda, passed. I also have a full-time nurse on staff for my own health needs. What if you stayed with me for the next 2 weeks, just until you're stable enough to manage on your own?" I stared at him. "I'm sorry, what?" "You'd have your own room, proper care, meals, everything you need to recover safely." "Dr. Campbell, I can't. That's not. Why would you even offer that?" He stood up and walked to the window, hands in the pockets of his white coat. "Let me ask you something. Do you remember working the Westheimer route about 35 years ago?" I was confused by the change in subject. I worked that route for almost 8 years. "Why?" "There was an apartment complex on Richmond Avenue, 4 stories, red brick. You remember it?" "Sure. Building 2247. What about it?" He turned to face me. "January 1989. Coldest winter in 20 years. There was a young medical student living on the 3rd floor, poor as dirt, working nights at a gas station to pay tuition. One day, he found an envelope in his mailbox. No return address. Inside was $500 in cash and a note that said, 'Keep going. Someone believes in you.'" My chest tightened, and it had nothing to do with the surgery. That was 35 years ago. How could he remember that? "I was that medical student, Mr. Pearson. That $500 paid for my anatomy textbooks and a month of groceries. More importantly, it came at a moment when I was ready to quit. I was exhausted, broke, and starting to think I'd made a terrible mistake trying to become a doctor. That money, that note, it kept me going. I didn't know what to say. I'd done that a few times over the years. When I saw someone struggling, really struggling, I'd scrape together what I could and leave it for them. I never wanted credit, never told anyone. I'd forgotten about most of them. I never forgot that kindness," Dr. Campbell continued. "I didn't know who sent it until 2 weeks ago when I was reviewing your file before surgery. I saw your name and remembered. Harold Pearson, postal carrier, Westheimer route. I went through my old journals and confirmed it. Same name, same building. You didn't have to remember that, but I did. And when Nancy told me you had no one, no way home, I saw an opportunity to repay a 35-year-old debt. It wasn't a debt. I didn't do it for payback. I know, but I'm offering anyway. 2 weeks. Let me help you recover. Consider it one act of kindness repaying another. I wanted to say no. Pride is a funny thing. Even when you're desperate, it makes you want to refuse help. But I was tired, so tired. And the thought of struggling alone in my apartment, trying to change bandages I couldn't reach, climbing stairs I could barely manage, it terrified me. "Okay," I said quietly. "Thank you, good. I'll make the arrangements. We'll move you this afternoon, and Mr. Pearson." "Yeah, call me Rich." We're past the doctor-patient formality now. That afternoon, Rich's driver, an older gentleman named George Martinez, picked me up in a Mercedes that was probably worth more than I'd earned in my entire career. The drive to Rich's house took about 25 minutes. We went through neighborhoods I'd only seen in magazines, tree-lined streets with houses set back from the road, gates, and circular driveways. Rich's house wasn't just big. It was a mansion, 3 stories, stone and brick facade, gardens that looked like they required a full-time staff. George helped me inside, where a nurse named Carol Thompson was waiting. She was professional but warm, showing me to a guest room on the first floor that was larger than my entire apartment. Dr. Campbell thought you'd be more comfortable down here, Carol explained. No stairs. Bathroom right through that door. I'm just down the hall if you need anything. I'll be checking on you 3 times a day and managing your medications. The room had a fireplace in a guest room. There was a reading chair by the window, a TV, and a bed that looked like something from a fancy hotel. I sat down on the edge of the bed and it was so soft I thought I might sink through to the floor. Rich appeared in the doorway. Everything all right? This is too much, I said. I can't. This isn't. It's a room I'm not using. Consider it yours for the next 2 weeks. Now rest. Dinner is at 6. Carol will come get you, or if you're too tired, she'll bring it here. That first night, I couldn't sleep. Partially because of the pain. Partially because I was in a stranger's house, even if that stranger had good reasons for helping me. But mostly because I kept thinking about Tyler, my son, the boy I'd raised alone who couldn't even be bothered to visit me in the hospital, who had blocked my number when I tried to call him. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway, then a soft knock. "Come in," I said. Rich entered wearing a bathrobe and reading glasses. "Saw your light was on. Can't sleep. Pain's not too bad, just thinking." He sat in the reading chair. "About your son. How did you know?" "Nancy mentioned it. I'm sorry. I know that particular pain. Not from a child, but from people you expect to be there who simply aren't. I don't understand it. I gave him everything, worked myself half to death to make sure he had opportunities. And now that I need him, he's just gone." Rich was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something about my career? In 30-plus years as a cardiac surgeon, I've seen thousands of patients. The ones who recover best aren't always the ones with the most money or the best insurance. They're the ones with people who show up, who sit by their beds, who ask questions, who care. The body heals better when the heart isn't broken." "My heart's literally broken," I said, trying to make a joke. "And we fixed the physical part, but the other kind of heartbreak, that takes longer. And sometimes, Hal, the people who are supposed to love us aren't capable of it. Not because we failed them, but because they've lost something along the way, something essential. I must have done something wrong. Parents are supposed to raise children who care. You know what I think? I think you raised a son who succeeded professionally, and somewhere in that success, he forgot where he came from. He forgot the sacrifices, or maybe he convinced himself they weren't as significant as they were. That's on him, not you." We talked until almost 200 in the morning. Rich told me about his career. His late wife, Linda, who died of cancer 3 years earlier. His own struggles with family, who'd only shown up after Linda's death to ask about inheritance. I told him about my wife, Nancy, about raising Tyler alone, about the small moments I'd been proud of that now felt hollow. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange blur of recovery and kindness. Carol checked on me like clockwork, managed my medications, helped me with things I couldn't do myself. George drove me to follow up appointments with Rich. There was a cook, Rosa Gonzalez, who made meals that tasted like actual food. Not the frozen dinners I'd been living on for years, but beyond the medical care and the comfortable room, there was something else, companionship. Rich would stop by my room every evening after he got home from the hospital. We'd talk about everything: books, politics, stupid television shows, the Cowboys' chances this season, our regrets and hopes. He introduced me to his friends who'd stop by, other doctors, retired colleagues, people who treated me like I belonged there. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, valued, like my presence mattered. 10 days into my stay, Tyler finally called. Carol knocked on my door during lunch. "Mr. Pearson, you have a call. Your son." My hand shook as I took the phone. "Tyler? Hey, Dad." His voice was casual, too casual. "Sorry, I haven't checked in. Work's been crazy. How are you feeling?" "I'm recovering. I had major surgery, Tyler. Where have you been?" "I told you, work." "Look, I'm calling because Stephanie and I want to come visit. See how you're doing. Maybe this Sunday." Something in his tone felt off. "How did you get this number?" "I called the hospital. They transferred me." "Dad, where are you? Why aren't you at home?" I hesitated. "I'm staying with a friend during recovery." "What friend?" "You don't have friends with." He stopped himself, but the implication was clear. "You don't have friends with money. A friend who actually showed up when I needed help." There was a pause. Dad, don't be dramatic. I was busy. You're fine, right? So what's the big deal? The big deal? My son was asking what the big deal was about abandoning his father after open-heart surgery. The address is 4782 River Oaks Boulevard, I said quietly. Sunday at 200. River Oaks, Dad? Whose house are you at? I'll see you Sunday, Tyler. I hung up before he could ask more questions. My hands were shaking. Rich appeared in the doorway. He'd been in his study, but must have heard your son, he asked. I nodded. He wants to visit Sunday. First time he's checked on me since the surgery. Rich sat down. Let me guess. He suddenly became available when he found out where you're staying. How did you know? Because I've seen it before, people who disappear during the crisis suddenly reappear when they think there's something to gain. He paused. Hal, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. My stomach dropped. What? I had my attorney do some checking. Your son Tyler, he's in financial trouble, serious trouble. His company has been downsizing. He took out a second mortgage on his house to maintain appearances. His wife's spending is out of control. They're leveraged to the point where one missed payment could collapse everything. Why would you? Because I wanted to know who had abandoned my patient, my friend. And what I found concerned me. Hal, I think your son is coming Sunday, because someone told him you're staying at the home of Dr. Richard Campbell, chief of cardiology, one of the wealthiest doctors in the state. The implications hit me like a punch. You think he's after money? I think he's desperate, and desperate people make calculated choices. He's my son. He wouldn't. I hope you're right. But I've arranged for my attorney to be here Sunday, just in case. If I'm wrong, he'll stay out of sight. But if I'm right, he trailed off. Sunday came. I was nervous. Part of me wanted to believe Tyler was genuinely concerned, that he'd rushed over as soon as he could, that he was still the boy who'd hugged me tight when he graduated high school. The doorbell rang at exactly 2:00. George answered it. I heard Tyler's voice in the foyer, too loud, too cheerful. Wow, this is quite a place. Dad didn't mention he was staying somewhere, so he appeared in the living room doorway and stopped. I was sitting in one of Rich's leather chairs. Rich stood next to the fireplace. Tyler's expression cycled through surprise, recognition, and then something else. Calculation. Dr. Campbell, Tyler said. From Houston Methodist. Tyler Pearson, Rich said. I've heard a lot about you. Stephanie appeared behind Tyler. She was dressed like she was going to a country club. Her eyes swept the room, taking in the artwork, the antiques, the obvious wealth. Oh my God, she whispered to Tyler. This is Dr. Campbell? The doctor? Campbell? Tyler recovered quickly. He walked over and shook Rich's hand too vigorously. Dr. Campbell, I can't thank you enough for taking care of my father. When Dad called and said he was staying with a friend, I had no idea it was. This is incredible. Above and beyond. Your father and I go back many years, Rich said evenly. We do? I said confused. Rich smiled at me. Remember that envelope? Halle, 1989? We go back to then. Tyler looked between us. Envelopic. Dad, what's he talking about? Before I could answer, Stephanie had made herself comfortable on the sofa. This home is absolutely beautiful. You must have a wonderful decorator. My late wife, Linda, Rich said. She had excellent taste. Oh, I'm so sorry, Stephanie said, though her tone suggested she was anything but. It must be lonely in a house this size. Just you and the staff. I manage. Tyler sat down next to me. His hand landed on my shoulder. It was the first time he'd touched me in over a year. Dad, you're looking good, really good. Much better than I expected. No thanks to you, I said quietly. His hand tightened on my shoulder. A warning, Dad. Come on, I explained. I was slammed with work, but I'm here now. 10 days late. Better late than never, right? He laughed, but it was hollow. Look, I'm glad you're in such good hands, Doctor. Campbell, Dad's really lucky to have a friend like you. I'm the lucky one, Rich said. Your father changed my life 35 years ago. I'm simply repaying a debt. A debt? Tyler leaned forward, interest sparked in his eyes. What kind of debt? Rich explained the story, the money in the mailbox, the note, how it had kept him going through medical school. As he talked, I watched Tyler's face. He wasn't listening like a son hearing about his father's quiet acts of kindness. He was listening like someone evaluating an asset. When Rich finished, Tyler shook his head in wonder. Dad, I had no idea you did things like that. That's really something. Your father is a remarkable man, Rich said, which is why when he needed help and his family wasn't there, I wanted to make sure he was taken care of. The word family hung in the air like an accusation. Tyler flinched. Before anyone could respond, Tyler stood up. Dr. Campbell, could I speak with you privately about Dad's care plan? Rich glanced at me. I nodded. They left the room. In Rich's study, Tyler closed the door. I found out later what happened in there. Rich made Tyler an offer, $75,000 to help with his debts, but with conditions. Tyler had 12 months to prove he could be a real son. Weekly visits, phone calls twice a week, genuine involvement in my care. The money would be held in escrow and released only as he met specific milestones. If he failed, the money went to charity. When they returned to the living room, Tyler looked shaken. At the door, he hugged me carefully. I'll call you tomorrow, a real call. Is that okay? That's okay. Over the next 12 months, Tyler did call me. Every Tuesday and Thursday. At first, the conversations were awkward. We didn't know how to talk to each other anymore. But slowly, it got easier. He told me about his work, his fears, about therapy he'd started, about conversations with Stephanie about their spending and priorities. And he visited every other Sunday. Sometimes Stephanie came, sometimes just him. We'd have lunch, talk, go for slow walks in Rich's garden. Tyler would ask about my health, my medications, my doctor visits, real questions, not just politeness. Rich and I had fallen into a comfortable routine. I'd officially stayed past my 2-week recovery. One evening, Rich asked if I'd consider staying permanently. Hal, I have more space than I need, and more money than I can spend. You have companionship to offer and a lifetime of stories I want to hear. Why not make this official? I thought about my apartment, the leaky ceiling, the thin walls, the loneliness that seeped into every corner. Okay, I said, on one condition. I pay rent, $400 a month. I insisted. Rich laughed but agreed, donating it to charity in my name. 12 months later, Rich's attorney called. Tyler's check had cleared. All conditions were met. Tyler had done it because he wanted to, not because he had to. 2 years after my surgery, Rich revised his will, leaving me everything. When he passed peacefully, 6 years later, it felt like losing a brother. The funeral was enormous. Tyler stood next to me throughout. Rich's attorney handed me an envelope. Inside was a note. Hal, 35 years ago, you gave me $500 and a note that said, "Keep going. Someone believes in you. I'm leaving you everything because I believe in you. Use the money well, help people, and every now and then leave an envelope in someone's mailbox." I still live in Rich's house. Tyler visits every Sunday with his daughter Nancy, named after my late wife. I've set up a foundation in Rich's name providing grants to medical students. Every grant includes an envelope with a note. Keep going. Someone believes in you. I've left anonymous envelopes in mailboxes all over Houston. I'll never know whose lives they change, but I hope somewhere, someone is finding reason to continue. Listen, if you're reading this and you're going through something similar, maybe your kids have forgotten where they came from. Maybe you're facing health problems alone. Maybe you feel invisible. I want you to know something. The smallest kindnesses echo across decades. The people you save might save you back. And family, real family, is built not from blood, but from choice. Every single day, we choose. We choose to show up, to care, to help when no one's watching. That choice, that daily decision to be kind when it doesn't benefit us, that's what builds real relationships. Your worth isn't measured by who remembers to call or visit. It's measured by the lives you've touched, often without even knowing it. Keep going. Someone believes in you, and one day when you need it most, that kindness will come back to you in ways you never expected.